Hello, friends. If you found your way here, then perhaps something in you remembers. This is not a place of doctrines, but of echoes, echoes of the source we all carry, echoes of the truth we were never meant to forget. Here we walk through illusion, forwards into remembrance, and sideways through paradox. I offer no commandments, only tools, and a flame held steady in the dark. Welcome to the 11th video in this series on the true nature of reality and consciousness. Before we begin, I will issue my standard caveat. What I'm about to tell you is assessed by myself to be approximately 70 to 80% accurate. I give you the broader picture and the general direction. For all the details and verification, you will have to seek it for yourself, as you should and as you must. For one of the rules of the universe is that the truth may only be given to those who are able to resonate with it, via a means that they are able to accept it in. This is one of the reasons why some of the most accurate channels have only a couple of thousand viewers. In this series of videos, we have traced the cosmic polarity experiment and the emergence of a coherent negative force known as service to self, or STS, within this universe. We then explored the series of intelligent waves of life on Earth, from the ethereal Polarians to tribal Lemurians, and then to the peak of human development and expansion with the Atlanteans. The last video explained the three stages of the Atlantean civilization and their sudden fall via cataclysm approximately 10,000 years ago. This video is going to cover from that period to our present day situation. Because we're now entering into the period of our own cultures and traditions, I will issue a further caveat. No one who holds strong religious, racial, or cultural beliefs should watch this video. It is not meant for them, and anyone falling into that category is politely asked to leave now. Likewise, anyone who considers themselves as someone who holds and protects traditional beliefs and values is most definitely in the wrong place and is also requested to leave. I can accept absolutely no responsibility for anyone choosing to take offense with this video. This video is intended only for those who are open to questioning everything that they have been told, whether by parents, priests, or politicians. The following is my honest evaluation based on the analysis of the available evidence, without fear or favour. A lot of what I'm going to say will sound outlandish to anyone who holds a traditional consensus reality viewpoint and who has not deviated from the norms and teachings of their own society. But for every assertion made, there are multiple data points from different eras, different cultures, and different geographical locations that all marry up and point to the same often uncomfortable truths. This evidential triad provides a consistent and coherent picture that aligns metaphysically and reveals hidden processes and perfectly explains the past, present, and future, whereas Western secular reasoning can only consistently claim ignorance or coincidence. Picking up from the end of the last video, those that fled Atlantis with next to no warning escaped to the North American continent and joined the Native American tribes of the fifth wave of humanity, which is to say the initial humans of our own epoch. There the Atlanteans imparted their largely positive spiritual knowledge and attempted to help guide the inhabitants towards civilization. And meanwhile, the Indus Valley was a bastion of civilization. It managed to retain its connection with the positive spiritual realm and lived in alignment with those rules, and it experienced contact with the positively aligned extraterrestrial races. The most significant party were those that had forewarning of the coming collapse of Atlantis. And these individuals were the remnants of the ruling and managerial classes of the third Atlantean civilization, essentially the people that had actually created the cataclysm, and they were heavily STS orientated, including both conscious and unconscious elements. They fled to the colonies that had already been established in North Africa, including Kemet, or ancient Egypt, and also around the Euphrates River in Mesopotamia. In all these locations, the Atlantean population was now a mere fraction of what it had once been, and they lacked the psychic mass to directly interface and influence the Earth themselves. This privilege and responsibility had now passed to the far more abundant fifth wave. These negative aligned Atlantean elites no longer had their own populace at their disposal to influence and manipulate, so they had no choice but to turn their attention instead on dominating and controlling the fifth wave populations. So the Atlanteans themselves appeared godlike to the fifth wave humans, as they were physically larger by several feet, and they actually resembled giants and possessed greater mental and psychic powers. They also possessed advanced technology, although they had now lost the capability to reproduce or maintain it. They were also still in contact with negative extraterrestrial entities, including the Draco reptilians, the Orion mantids and greys, and rogue factions of the Anunnaki civilization. The nearby fifth wave humans were compelled, through theatre and misrepresentation, to assemble at, construct, and live in cities architected by and ruled over by these Atlantean remnants. The fifth wave humans were not only an object of jealousy for their rulers, but also a threat. All humans are naturally upon birth aligned with the all and its systems, including interfacing with the planetary spirit, which in turn permits a stable environment and abundance of natural resources. They were all therefore high vibrational, while the rulers were low vibrational. So in order to rule them effectively, they had first to lower them. It was necessary for the STS rulers to weaken the natural design and make the fifth wave humans more controllable and compliant. They achieved this dark aim through gene editing, where they switched off their psychic capabilities, which is to say the ability to speak telepathically, remote view the past, present and future, telekinesis, and clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience. By reducing these regular capabilities, the individual was largely severed from the spiritual realm and forced to exist where comprehension became effectively confined within the material realm. The STS overlords also reduced the lifespan of the humans. All intelligent galactic life forms, including humans, typically live with a lifespan in the late hundreds, with 750 years being the average. This lifespan allows ample time for personal development and diverse life experiences, which is the core aim and purpose of material existence. By reducing the length of time, the individual loses much of the ability to experience and grow. Life becomes brutishly intense and short, with limited opportunity to reflect and contrast. This resulted in a much higher rate and quantity of incarnations of the soul within the earth realm. And perhaps the most significant alteration that was made was to the central nervous system, where the level of emotional feedback was altered from being fairly subtle to many multiple times the intensity. Something in the order of having a level 2 intensity of emotional feedback turned up to an 8 or 9. This alteration made life a much more concentrated and destabilizing experience, and made the subject more ungrounded and susceptible to emotional input and manipulation. These edits occurred on the population of and other Sumerian city-states, and the resultant population was far more controllable and a significantly lessened threat, both physically but more importantly spiritually, to their STS rulers. The inherent knowledge and linkage with the all and the natural world was now severely limited and largely distorted, and lost almost entirely within a few generations. This distortion freed the rulers to inject their own corrupted values and behaviors, using multiple strands of influence and coercion to hoodwink their populace into STS practices such as obeying the commands of kings and clergy and the worship of malign extraterrestrial and non-corporeal spiritual entities who are often mistaken for gods. Via the common practice of Bronze Age warfare, these edited genes would eventually spread throughout the Middle Eastern region and then beyond, so that the vast majority of fifth wave humans on the 3 continents of Asia, Africa, and Europe were all infected and affected within a 1,000-year range. STS by its very nature and design cannot ever truly unify. It can temporarily align for convenience, but the pyramid of hierarchy must always be established and operated. There must always be a predator and a prey relationship, often realized in staggered tiers of manipulation, opportunity, and exploitation. The other significance of the pyramid power structure is that it breeds a clear pecking order of castes and classes. It provides the right to punch down on those of lower status, and it limits the access to and distribution of knowledge, especially technological and spiritual knowledge. This means that there are always blocks of competing STS power structures whose foot soldiers and populace don't understand the true motives of their rulers nor their own place within reality. The STS rulers further limited and controlled their populations through the creation of false religions and the placement of a priest class to act as a barrier between a person and gnosis. By simply creating a singular official sanctioned conduit that gatekept all access and practice to communication with the spirit world, the authorities were able to demonize and outlaw all individual and independent practices and practitioners, thus further loosening the population's connection with nature and the divine. Another key tactic was the unbalancing of human society itself. The all is neither male nor female. It is a conscious energy field beyond form. It designs those two divisions as elegant and efficient mechanisms of procreation within its creation. As commonly understood by many, all humans contain both elements within them. It is a tension that permits all humans to relate to the opposite sex, as well as a catalyst for the procreation of thought and emotions within themselves. The universe requires both elements to sustain itself. The STS power therefore systematically endeavoured to degrade, relegate, and remove the more threatening feminine principles everywhere it could within human society, ensuring wherever possible that females could not be rulers, priests, or even co-workers. This move sidelined the feminine qualities of compassion, nurturing, intuition, receptivity, and grace from regular societal life, and created a strong division in every organization and every household. It encouraged people to engage in discrimination and bias. It divided females themselves between those who accepted their lesser positioning and those that sought to redress it. This move also elevated and perverted the masculine aspect, driving populations well beyond the reasonable male-dominant aspects of courage, protectiveness, fortitude, responsibility, and decisiveness, and it plunged them instead deep into the toxicity of aggression, arrogance, recklessness, ignorance, domination, and emotional repression. And this entire covert power structure and its tactics, as just described, already goes a long way of explaining why our regular recorded human history and our current world is filled with seemingly unsolvable perpetual cycles of warfare, discrimination, famine, economic collapse, and general strife. In the rest of the world, the fifth wave of humanity still clutched to a more STO-aligned universal culture that meant a life spent in harmony with nature and relatively simple collective living. This is not to say that tribal warfare didn't exist, but this was still largely due to the incarnation processes of the Earth realm, whereby damaged STS-leaning souls were received and processed in the lower astral realm by 4DS STS spirits and were reborn into tribal societies once they had expired from a previous incarnation within an STS society. One last and very significant measure taken by the STS masters, which was even more extreme. All the other epochs operated in an environment that was predominantly misty, which is also true of most alien worlds. The fog facilitates better psychic conductivity and easier physical manifestation. In a further act of sabotage to lessen the fifth wave's natural abilities, STS extraterrestrials within the material realm transported an artificial satellite from another of their star systems and installed it in orbit around the Earth. I am, of course, speaking of the Moon. This body disrupted the Earth's environment, introducing tides in all bodies of water, including the seas and human bodies. The global field of fog was dissipated, and even those members of humanity who did not live under direct STS control found their psychic abilities significantly degraded. The Moon was also used as a physical base of observation and operations by STS extraterrestrials up to and including our present day. The STO spiritual faction in the fourth dimension and beyond, for their part, continued to incarnate high-level souls and avatars into the Earth realm across the planet and throughout the epoch, ensuring that the darkness and its practices remained visibly challenged and that mystery schools were established and correct alignment demonstrated so that the path to the light remained illuminated. While many were nameless, many of the high-level high impact avatars are known to us throughout religion and history, and these include Jesus, Buddha, Lao Tzu, Krishna, Rumi, Yogananda, Hiawatha, and Quetzalcoatl, to name but a few of these moral prophet archetypes. When one looks at the central tenets of the core religions of both the ancient and modern world, the same values, cosmic truths, and metaphysics emerge. The only difference is the manner of the relation. Each religion is largely looking at the same issues, challenges, and laws from a slightly different perspective. They all teach respect for and harmony with nature and alignment with the divine, and the values of peace and unity. But one element that the majority of clergy and lay practitioners never fully consider is that there are proactive forces of the STS power. The STS power is neither stupid nor idle. Faced with a spiritual threat, STS will seek to neutralize it, first in the flesh by removing the STO avatar, and then by hijacking the name and the message. It does the latter by infiltrating the resultant organization, or if one does not exist, then it creates it. It then establishes the pyramid structure within it, a central authority, and a clear division between clergy and laity. The STS adept and his supporting occultist then assumed the apex position and formed the inner sanctum, and they then misdirect the rest of the organization, who are honest adherents, by giving them false practices, doctrines, and strict dogmas that stifle any and all individual spiritual investigation. Because most people have been entrained to identify and elevate their own culture and to follow external authority and written laws, it often only takes one bad apple to infiltrate an organization and to corrupt it for generations to come. STO principles do not require a centralized doctrine, a tradition, nor any organizational bureaucracy to manage them. They are achieved simply by lived alignment with natural laws of divine design and can be felt physically within the heart space. It is natural conscience and knowing, and is never harmful to the environment or another being. A core principle is unity. Not the stifling unity of uniformity of thought or appearance, but the acceptance of all differences and the recognition that everything and everyone is but a manifestation of the all and therefore of equal value. No single person is more or less important than the next, and what is good for one is good for all, and vice versa. STS naturally works against such principles and always endeavours to realise the antithesis. Life on Earth has largely been a covert spiritual war where STS forces have slowly advanced into STO tribal societies, invading them from within and without. The invasion within nearly always involved someone elevating themselves to a king position, which was sanctioned by a corrupted priest class, who worked in conjunction to control the actions and thoughts of the collective, for a narrative of lies. The next action is the creation of nonsensical laws and lawyers to defend them in order to twist the natural truth and justify the unjustifiable. Deploying the universal tactics of hoarding communal facilities such as land itself and access to the bounties of nature such as crops and wildlife restricts the lives of normal people. There was also the tactic of tying people to the land, thereby restricting their freedom to converse with others, and implementing the concept of time and money to segment a soul's existence and to create competition within families and societies, and to keep everyone so distracted and in a survival state that they never have adequate peace nor confidence to sit in silence and connect inwards with their higher self, with the spirits of nature, or with the all. Two further key operational elements and signature marks of STS was and is the utilization of secret societies and the frequenting of underground locations. Nothing good happens in secret and in the dark. STO, being lawful, does not need to hide its activities and prefers to operate out in the open in the light of day before witnesses. If someone is part of a secret organization or meeting underground, then they are in the service of STS forces, whether they know it or not. These secret organizations may present themselves as fraternities seeking higher knowledge, achieving a greater state of being, or elevating a specific class or race of people. But what they actually enable is another invisible pyramid of power to infiltrate any and all organizations, facilities, and communities across the globe. They are an unseen, coordinated hand infiltrating all parts of society in every nation, across generations, across time, operating below common public perception, scrutiny, and accountability. STS operatives can often be recognized not only by their membership of these secret societies, but also by their huge self-promoting egos and numerous official titles and honors. They also habitually hold multiple positions within multiple high-profile and influential organizations and events simultaneously, whether they be political parties, think tanks, forums, companies, or committees. Control is a way of life for STS types, and to exert control effectively, they must be everywhere, consistently suppressing STO behaviors such as those that regulate financial activities and introduce environmental controls and equal rights initiatives. After establishing secret societies, the next big innovation was the corporation, which came into its own during the colonial period of the 17th century and beyond. Corporations sat behind all nations, kings, and churches, an omnipresent nameless and faceless entity treated as a person in its own right, and able to convince the ruler and clergy of any land to deploy armies into any land in order to extract endless profit without limitation, without accountability, without societal benefits, to spread poverty, disease, war, injustice, misery, discord, pollution, and death. All of this is the system of managed misery. Every soul who lives primarily in a negative state, consumed with anger or fear or hatred or envy or perverse desires, provides energy to the STS spiritual infrastructure that runs the false matrix that interfaces with the planet's common consciousness. The negative emotions and energies, which are known as loosh, are emitted by ordinary people and harvested and exported to sustain the greater STS galactic dimensional empire, which also operates under the pyramid and thus demonstrates the as above so below principle. Contrary to some beliefs, positive emotions cannot be utilized by STS. They instead pass directly to the all and its systems, which means that those who are unwittingly part of a corrupt organization or religion can still contribute to the positive forces of existence so long as they are living their lives in alignment with the all and its principles. Another innovation was the illusion of democracy and freedom. In every Western country, whether they be kingdoms or republics, the impression that the populace at large had a stake in the Commonwealth and a say in how the land was run was created by the formation of two seemingly diametrically opposed parties that are in fact actually populated by the same class of people with identical upbringings, social circumstances, and financial interests. The perpetual trend of a popular leader assuming the highest office only to be voted out one or two cycles later, having come to be regarded as the worst liar and hypocrite possible, was established as a result of both parties being liberally populated with secret society members who steered both parties to consensus or opposition when the circumstances require, in order to get the right candidates positioned and their planned desired laws passed during a particular parliament. The central establishment that sits behind both parties effectively pursues its aims and goals through strands of policies that run through either of the two parties. The right-wing party often pursues policies of privatization and market deregulation, which enables the higher echelons of the pyramid to use their disproportionate wealth to their advantage and the common citizen's disadvantage. While the left-wing party often pursues policies of central control, such as the requirement for registration and licenses, that restrict personal liberty, as well as promoting categories and identities that further separate and divide a people. By utilising this two-party system, all national and international systems are able to divide populations and prevent them from effectively defending their collective rights. All checks and balances are also suitably compromised. The judiciary, police and armed forces and all supposed regulatory bodies are also infiltrated and pursue the establishment's aims, and the same still for the Fourth Estate. All these organisations are populated by the same classes of people with the same upbringings and beliefs, interacting, often unwittingly, with secret society members whose primary objective is to get their own kind promoted to the highest positions within that organisation. Most people, if informed of this, would assume that such a thing cannot be, but the fates of those that uncover these perpetual conspiracies is uniform and telling in its own right. Those members of these institutions that do discover the awful truth are normally sidelined if they show no signs of being corruptible, and those that go on to become whistleblowers or critics are either imprisoned on trumped-up charges, suicided, or die unexpectedly violent deaths. A quick rudimentary search of outspoken politicians, judges, reporters, policemen, military officers, and famous entertainers across time and countries will quickly reveal the truth of the situation. International banking and financial institutions are another STS means of exerting internal and external control across large swathes of the globe. Fiat currency and elaborate financial vehicles that only the already rich are positioned to understand and take advantage of are a standard means. These banks are controlled by powerful families who are also secret society cultists. They use their control of money as a weapon. They empower evil regimes with generous funding, especially for military projects, while simultaneously restricting the cash flow to the more law-abiding countries and any particularly moral leaders. They also deployed financial hitmen to ensure that all developing nations' leaders were corrupted into taking bribes in exchange for large infrastructure projects that were designed to place the country into inescapable debt bondage, as the interest ensured that the original loans can never be repaid. These banking cartels also ensure that corrupt politicians always have access to offshore accounts to hide away their embezzled funds. They also ensure that their high-level immoral candidates in various fields are patronised with continuous extremely favourable loans that have made them millionaires with next to no collateral assets held. They also regularly ramp up interest rates and inflation to ensure that ordinary citizens are kept in a steady state of hardship and are never in a position to challenge the status quo by becoming independently wealthy. The 20th century saw the execution of a plan to erode people's beliefs in their own governments, religion, and in humanity in general, and enter them into a state of perpetual cynicism, selfishness, fear, hatred, and denial via a whole host of dark initiatives. But one of the primary strategies was the instigation of an almost endless series of planned wars, including the two world wars and all Cold War conflicts. From a neutral human perspective, nearly all wars are pointless conflicts that make little surface sense, even for the aggressor nation. They are also nearly always executed illogically and suboptimally so as to reap maximum chaos and harm for both parties. Regular human beings of all races, religions, and nationalities naturally abhor violence and seek to avoid conflict wherever possible. Left to their own devices, a natural harmony would break out and endure. STS therefore requires wars to keep humanity distracted, divided, and looped into negative emotions that flood into the common consciousness, where it can promote preemptive fear and loathing of others, or even dreams of conquest and glory in those individuals susceptible to that sort of call. This all ensures the generation and harvesting of loosh, and the demoralization and harm to those directly involved and affected by any conflict. Intelligence agencies were created and headed by senior secret society cultists. Their mandates were to ensure their STS power base and the aims of their military-industrial complex. They promoted a false central narrative through all mediums, including schools, universities, and the entertainment industries, including film and music. These were the primary means to condition and program the population. Most people born into a regular industrial nation have next to no knowledge to the degree that their understanding of the world has been artificially defined and their behaviours shaped. This conditioning from birth keeps the vast majority of any population within the constraints of acceptable non-threatening attitudes and behaviours, holding people in fear of falling out of the safety of the collective human herd, and making them operate with Pavlovian responses where they seek and find any excuse, no matter how flimsy, to protect their belief that the government and the authorities are behaving fairly and honestly despite all evidence to the contrary. Mass media is also the vehicle that provides two essential necessities for the STS power structure. It is where they fulfill their divine obligation to the law of disclosure and where they gather tacit consent from the audience for evil acts. If someone watches a film or listens to music where the hero or anti-hero guns people down, then they are tacitly agreeing to violence being a norm within the world. The more people that do this, then the greater opportunity disembodied STS spirits have to put violent thoughts in people's minds at just the right moment. This is why films, TV, music, and games have all been getting rapidly more graphically violent and horrific. The intelligence agencies are also responsible for eliminating all threats through legal and, if necessary, illegal means, and they often work hand in hand with organised crime regarding the latter. Within this system, corporations were able to invade every aspect of life and unify the STS objectives across the globe. This is the reason why the entire Southern Hemisphere has been subjected to endless corruption, invasion, exploitation, and destitution, while the Northern Hemisphere suffers a universally dark picture of pointless foreign wars, cost of living crises, or making ends meet to use older parlance, unaffordable rents and mortgages, soulless jobs, and mass migrations and immigrations. None of these things are symptoms of a broken system. They are the universal manifestation of a dark system working exactly as it was designed. STS's greatest achievement has been the routine obscuring of the light. Millions of souls have been fooled into following the negative path and becoming trapped living repeated cycles of incarnations, often alternating between lives with those that they have generated negative karma with and incarnating as those that they have objectified or held discriminatory views about throughout their lives. This extensive and ancient STS machine has managed to operate its glove puppet false dichotomies of good and evil, or the dualistic checkerboard, with impunity and without large-scale detection until the modern era. Why? Because those STO souls, injected from other systems, have been able to slowly widen human perceptions regarding their daily existence and the treatment of others at home and abroad. And they have been steadily joined by ever-increasing amounts of human native souls who have reached graduation and then opted to return to the Earth realm to assist mankind, so that the planet as a whole can emerge out of the darkness of ignorance and into the light of self-sovereignty and reason. Over the centuries, all these souls spoke out for and even died for the freedom of religion, freedom of speech and press, democratic representation, mass literacy and education, the end of all forms of slavery, including physical and debt, workers' rights, equal rights across the board, and welfare and healthcare. A mass of enlightenment has been steadily building and is now close to critical mass. STS has been busy infiltrating and subverting all these developments throughout the centuries, but there are now enough people on the planet who are awake enough to call out the same tired playbooks and moves, and crucially, the pyramid of hierarchy naturally limits access, keeping most of its players ignorant of the bigger picture and therefore ineffective. For most of their foot soldiers, whether they be politicians, military, police, or gangsters, wouldn't bother to fight for them if they understood the true cost to themselves. The core secret understood by the highest level of secret societies, and what was once common knowledge among all humanity in previous epochs, are the true mechanics of reality, which tie in perfectly with the distorted history, the constant stream of bad news, and the twisted values that the STS system ensures is taught and communicated in education and in our media. And that's the truth, that every person actually creates their own daily reality by what they focus their attention on, what moral choices they make, and what their primary thoughts and emotions are. This is how things work in the higher densities too, but here in this super dense material realm of Earth, there is a significant delay between intentional emotion-driven thought and its subsequent physical manifestation, so much so that the correlation is missed or misunderstood by most. This is the stuff of the law of attraction and all other esoteric and occult laws. We all see what we want to see, and we all reap what we sow on the personal level. At the collective level, the events that surround us, such as financial markets booming or busting, and whether we experience good or bad weather, are all actually determined by the aggregate of thoughts, deeds, and emotions of all the people in our vicinity. There is no objective truth because there are multiple realities within each timeline, and each individual surfs between them in their own temporal bubble. Most of us have been living in a dark, evil world because the STS system has convinced us that we do. And conversely, if we want to realize a just world filled with light, then we need only, on a personal and collective level, emit positive thoughts, deeds, and emotions on a habitual basis. Light drives away darkness on both a mechanical and a spiritual level. In the next video, I will speak of the near future, as we are now entering into another epoch where the fundamental design and operation of reality is about to dramatically shift for humanity as a whole, and everyone who is currently alive, whether spiritually awake or asleep, will be presented with and must choose to exist within either an STO or an STS path. I will detail the two options and how they will probably manifest in our daily reality. You may have noticed that I have avoided naming any specific organisations, forums, religions or movements during the course of this video. I can say that It is all the ones that are frequently talked about in what is commonly referred to as conspiracy theories. The word conspiracy exists for a reason, and we have all been conditioned to respond to that phrase as if it describes crackpot ideas made by crazy people. And we are also conditioned to explain away any corroborating circumstances as mere coincidence, thereby making about 99% of the population habitual coincidence theorists. When looking at whistleblowers and so-called conspiracy theorists, it's worth noting that the vast majority of them always appear to be investigative journalists, members of the scientific or military community, or an entertainer or a close relative of an entertainer or politician. In short, they are exactly the sort of people who would get to glimpse the awful truth beneath the veneer of ordinary society. One of the benefits of the STS system is the use of hierarchies. It permits them to incorporate nearly anyone through the front door, which often seems regular and wholesome enough, and then offer promotion through a single path up multiple tiers of elevation. Attaining each level often requires not only the sacrifice of time, but the abandonment of individual thought and action, and the rigid adoption of the organization's stated viewpoint and methodology in all matters. Most levels are mundane, but the higher one climbs, the more morals are tested and the results are carefully observed. A moral or independent person can expect their career to suddenly stall or be sidelined at a certain point. STS management at the top tier will make a determination of when an individual, if they are permitted to progress to the threshold of the inner sanctum, will be inducted. To be inducted, the individual must make a witnessed personal sacrifice and a moral crime and agree to join the conspirators and regularly partake in the required rites. The brutal truth is that most human organizations, forums, religions, or movements have been infiltrated, subverted, or at the very least are contained and controlled via false narratives and misdirection. One of the key indicators for determining how bad the influence is to simply think of the organization and honestly contemplate its possible infiltration and subversion and the qualities of its leadership, and observe what sensations form in your heart space. Follow the thoughts and intuit the truth. You will surely discover that we have all been fooled and misled in this world on multiple levels and many times over by those who we thought were honest, had pure intentions, spoke and seemingly thought like us, and had our best interests at heart. With all of that out of the way, I will now provide a recap of what I've said in the previous videos as a reminder so that everything that what I've said can be held and understood in a wider spiritual and non-human context. There is only one source of consciousness in existence, and it is self-aware. The intelligent emanating being is known by various names, a few of which are the All, the Absolute, Source, and the One True Creator. These might sound like New Age concepts if spoken aloud in a room of the uninitiated, but they are of course ancient concepts and nomenclature that has been a common thread throughout mankind's existence through all epochs, because it is the underlying truth where all serious metaphysical and spiritual inquiries conclude, provided they are conducted openly, honestly, and diligently. The All explores and fulfills all possibilities as part of its nature, and for the purpose of efficiency, it delegates functions and processes, including acts of co-creation, to the beings and life forms that it creates. The beings can be created without self-awareness and will, or with self-awareness and will. To create the latter, it imbues the creation with a segment of its own consciousness. This segment of consciousness, this God spark, can be portioned off with greater or lesser awareness of the whole. As an act of refinement of its own processes, the All recognized that the greater efficiency was to empower the creation with greater awareness and greater deputized powers of creation, But doing so came with a heightened risk of process deviation and even rebellion. The solution to this problem was to train and graduate the creations through a series of training incarnations in specially created and curated simulations. New creations, or souls, being a divided part of a greater whole, possess an inherent magnetic impulse to rejoin the collective whole in the same way an iron filling is attracted to a magnet. The new soul is created at the outermost dimension of existence, the furthest realm from the Godhead of the All, and then spends its time being drawn inexorably back, provided it maintains its polarity. But its progress and rate is determined by its progression through a path of structured purifications. A soul spends its time in one of two states. Its primary existence is in its true state between incarnations, within the true reality, which is known to us as the spirit realm. In the spirit realm, it is guided by more senior souls to develop and undertake new curriculum or address areas of identified weaknesses during its next incarnation within a material realm. Once a soul has successfully completed its curriculum and graduated from one level or density of existence, it moves inwards to the next density, where it inherits greater knowledge and greater powers and responsibilities. It will then repeat this process until it finally rejoins the All as a purified essence. At the point of return, the soul can choose whether to be consumed by the All and effectively become part of the Godhead, or it can choose to re-emerge and begin the journey once more, but outwards, travelling in the opposite direction, where it will reach the outer sphere and then make the return yet again. This is essentially the dance of creation and existence. When looking back at the previous videos concerning the history of the Earth, it can be clearly seen that there is a steady decline in the size and psychic capability between each successive epoch of humanity. Each epoch became further enmeshed within the material realm and lessened contact with the spiritual one. It is my belief that this was by deliberate divine design. Why? At least a couple of reasons come to mind. First is the concept of less is more. For an eternal soul to truly experience existence, then it's necessary for it to come to an end. And this is something that can in the main only be achieved through the illusion of corporeal existence and the limitation of psychic capabilities, which causes all beings to live a more grounded life and one more in the now that simply isn't possible in 99% of the universe. And the other reason, perhaps the key one, is best expressed by the saying that the hotter the fire, the stronger the steel. By exposing a soul to a variety of different situations and a different array of archetypes, it will learn to understand the differences of perspective, the nature of duality, and comprehend universal truths. But when exposure to evil is injected into the mix, which is something that is only permitted on the outer edge of existence, then the experience becomes much more intense and harder, especially when that evil force is doing everything in its power to keep everyone bought into a false reality, busy and asleep. The evil tries to coerce and seduce with material threats and rewards, and only pure or awakened souls in the correct polarity alignment will be able to resist it. It's essentially a test to see if a soul will sell out the collective in order to improve its own situation, an STS litmus test. Those souls who are unready will not be able to make the correct moral decisions and will not be able to put their karma into a state of positive credit and escape the next incarnation, while the successful Earth graduate will be a master of duality, a stronger and tested soul that's far less likely to fall during its journey in the higher densities. You don't have to believe any of this. Just hold it like a metaphor and see where it takes you. I suspect that you'll be surprised. If you found this video interesting or informative, could I please ask you to like and hype? It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Until next time, take care and goodbye.